The transport ship hummed softly as it descended through the blue atmosphere of Earth, and Zara pressed her three-fingered hand against the viewing port, while her purple skin reflected the sunlight streaming through the window, and her large black eyes absorbed every detail of the strange planet below. She had traveled across 7 star systems to reach this world, and the Galactic Child Care Council had assigned her to work with a human family for 1 standard cycle, and Zara felt both nervous and excited because humans were still considered a young species in the galactic community, and most alien races viewed them with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The ship landed in a residential area outside a city called Boston, and Zara gathered her belongings before stepping out onto solid ground for the first time in weeks, and the air felt different here, and it carried strange scents she could not identify, and the gravity was slightly heavier than her home world, but not uncomfortably. So a ground vehicle approached, and a woman with brown hair and kind eyes stepped out and smiled warmly at Zara, and the woman introduced herself as Amy Harper, and explained she would be Zara's employer for the coming months, and Zara noticed how the human moved with confidence but also showed genuine friendliness in her gestures. Amy drove Zara to a house surrounded by green plants and tall trees, and the building was smaller than the communal structures on Zara's planet, but it looked comfortable and inviting, and Amy explained that she worked as a medical researcher, and her husband worked in engineering, and they had 1 child who needed supervision during the day. Inside the house, Zara met a small human female named Katie who was 6 years old according to Earth measurements, and the child had bright, curious eyes and blonde hair that fell past her shoulders. And Katie stared at Zara with wonder rather than fear, and immediately asked if Zara could change colors like the creatures. In her picture books, Zara explained that her species could not change colors, but they could sense electromagnetic fields, and Katie's eyes grew even wider with excitement, and the child began asking dozens of questions about space and other planets, and different alien species. And Zara found herself charmed by the young human's enthusiasm. Amy showed Zara around the house and explained Katie's daily routine, and the child attended a learning institution each morning, but needed care in the afternoons. And Amy also mentioned that Katie was very independent, and sometimes did things without asking permission first, and parents needed to watch her carefully. The first few days passed smoothly, and Zara learned about human customs and food and entertainment, and she prepared simple meals for Katie, and helped her with learning assignments and played games that involved matching colors and building structures from small blocks. And Katie proved to be intelligent and creative, but also quite stubborn one. After noon, while Katie played in the backyard, Zara sat on a bench nearby and monitored the child, while also reading information about Earth on her datapad, and the sun felt warm on her purple skin, and she could hear birds singing in the trees, and everything seemed peaceful and routine. Katie had been building something with sticks and leaves, but suddenly she stopped and tilted her head as if listening to something, and Zara looked up from her reading and watched as the child walked toward the back fence where the property bordered a wooded area. Zara stood and followed at a distance because Amy had instructed her to give Katie some independence while still keeping her safe, and the child stopped at the fence and peered through the wooden slats into the forest beyond, and Zara moved closer to see what had caught Katie's attention. Through the fence, Zara spotted a small animal trapped in what appeared to be old wire fencing that humans sometimes used to mark boundaries, and the creature was a young deer, and it had somehow become entangled in the wire and was struggling to free itself. And its movements only made the wire tighter around its leg. Katie immediately tried to climb the fence, and Zara rushed forward and gently pulled her back and explained that the fence was too high and dangerous. And Katie looked up at Zara with those intense human eyes and said they had to help the animal, because it was hurt and scared. Zara felt torn, because her training emphasized keeping children safe above all else. But she also understood the human tendency toward compassion, and she told Katie they should contact Amy first. But Katie shook her head and insisted there was no time because the deer might injure itself further. Before Zara could respond, Katie had already found a loose board in the fence and squeezed through the gap, and Zara's hearts, both primary and secondary, beat faster as she watched the small human disappear into the woods, and she had no choice but to follow. Zara managed to slip through the fence opening, though it was a tight fit, and she emerged into the forest where tall trees blocked much of the sunlight, and the ground was covered with fallen leaves and broken branches, and she could see Katie ahead, moving quickly toward the trapped deer. The animal saw them approaching and panicked and tried harder to escape, and the wire cut into its leg, drawing blood, and Katie slowed her movements and began speaking in a soft, calm voice. And Zara was amazed at how the child seemed to understand the creature's fear. Katie approached the deer slowly with her hands visible and empty, and she continued speaking in that gentle tone. And gradually the animal stopped struggling and watched the small human with wide, frightened eyes, and Zara stood back because she did not want to startle the creature with her alien appearance. Katie knelt beside the deer and examined the wire carefully, and Zara moved closer to help, but still maintained some distance. And the child reached out slowly and touched the deer's head and stroked its fur, while whispering reassuring words, and the animal remained surprisingly still. Then Katie began working on the wire, and her small fingers pulled at the twisted metal. And Zara could see the wire was cutting into the child's hands, but Katie did not stop, and she worked with determination and focus that seemed unusual for such a young being. Zara offered to help, and Katie nodded, and together they carefully unwound. The wire from the deer's leg and Zara's fingers were more nimble than human ones, and she managed to loosen several tight loops, while Katie held the animal steady and continued speaking softly. Finally, the last piece of wire came free, and the deer's leg was bleeding but no longer trapped, and Katie moved back slowly to give the creature space, and the deer stood shakily testing its injured leg, and then looked directly at Katie for a long moment. What happened next would forever change how Zara viewed humans and the species they belonged to among the stars, because Katie placed her small hand on the deer's wounded leg and closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Zara watched in shock as a faint glow began to emanate from Katie's hand, and the light was warm and golden like sunlight, but more concentrated, and it pulsed gently in rhythm with what Zara assumed was the child's heartbeat. The deer remained completely still, as if understanding something important was happening. And Zara's translator implant could not explain what she was seeing, because this was not technology, and it was not anything she had encountered in her travels across the galaxy. The glow intensified slightly and then faded, and when Katie removed her hand, the wound on the deer's leg was completely healed, and the skin was smooth and unmarked, and even the dried blood had somehow disappeared, and the deer stood fully now without any sign of injury or pain. Katie opened her eyes and smiled at the animal, and the deer stepped forward and nuzzled the child's face gently before turning and bounding away into the forest. And Katie watched it go with obvious satisfaction, and then turned to look at Zara with an innocent expression. Zara's mind raced with questions and implications and possibilities, and she knew that humans were considered unusual in the galactic community because of their emotional intensity and their capacity for both great violence and great compassion. But this was something entirely different. Katie walked back toward the fence opening, and Zara followed in stunned silence, and they returned to the backyard, and Katie immediately resumed playing with her sticks and leaves as if nothing extraordinary had happened, and Zara sat on the bench trying to process what she had witnessed. According to all galactic records, humans did not possess healing abilities, and they did not have any documented psionic or energy manipulation capabilities, and yet Zara had just seen a 6-year-old human child heal a wounded animal with nothing but her hands and her intention. Zara considered reporting what she had seen to the Galactic Childcare Council, but something made her hesitate, and she remembered how Katie had looked at her after healing the deer, and there was no pride or boastfulness in that look, only simple satisfaction at helping a creature in need. That evening when Amy returned home, Zara debated whether to mention the incident, and she ultimately decided to describe the deer rescue but left out the healing part. And Amy smiled and said Katie had always been drawn to animals and loved helping creatures that were hurt or scared. Over the following days, Zara watched Katie more carefully, and she noticed small things she had missed before, and when Katie's playmate came over and scraped her knee falling from a swing, Katie touched the injury while comforting the other child, and the scrape healed faster than normal. When the family's pet cat seemed ill one morning, Katie held the animal for several minutes, and by afternoon the cat was active and playful again, and Amy commented that the cat must not have been truly sick, just feeling lazy. Zara began researching human capabilities more thoroughly, and she accessed restricted galactic databases and read classified reports about humanity, and what she discovered both fascinated and disturbed her. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. After developing faster than light travel, and most species had welcomed them cautiously, because humans were so emotionally volatile and unpredictable compared to other races. But there were notes in the classified files about unusual incidents involving humans in cases where human medical personnel achieved impossible recovery rates, and situations where human soldiers survived injuries that should have been fatal, and reports of human children displaying inexplicable abilities. The files also contained warnings, and several elder species in the galactic community had expressed concern about humanity's potential, and there were debates about whether humans should be monitored more closely or given restrictions on their expansion into space. Zara realized that what she was witnessing with Katie might not be unique, and perhaps many humans possessed abilities they either did not recognize or chose to keep hidden, and she wondered if Amy knew about her daughter's gift or if Katie had somehow concealed it even from her parents. One afternoon, Katie asked Zara about her homeworld, and Zara described the purple skies and the crystal cities and the vast oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life. And Katie listened with rapt attention and asked if anyone on Zara's planet could do magic. Zara explained that her people had advanced technology but no abilities that could be called magic, and Katie nodded thoughtfully and said that sometimes she could make hurt things feel better, and she asked if that was normal. Zara chose her words carefully and said that helping others was always good, but Katie should be careful about who she showed her abilities to, because not everyone would understand, and Katie looked relieved and said her mother had told her the same thing. So Amy did know, and Zara felt a mixture of relief and new questions, and she wondered how many other human parents were quietly raising children with impossible abilities and keeping them hidden from the wider galactic community. That evening, after Katie was asleep, Zara spoke with Amy and admitted she had seen Katie heal the deer, and Amy's expression grew serious, and she invited Zara to sit down for a long conversation. Amy explained that Katie had shown signs of unusual abilities since she was very young, and at first Amy and her husband thought it was coincidence or wishful thinking, but the incidents became too frequent to ignore, and they had consulted with doctors and researchers they trusted. The medical tests showed nothing unusual in Katie's biology, and her genetics were completely normal for a human child, but something about her consciousness or her intention seemed capable of affecting biological systems around her. Amy said that perhaps 1 in every 1,000 humans showed some degree of healing ability, and most never developed it beyond reducing their own recovery time from illness or injury. But a rare few like Katie could extend that ability to others. The phenomenon was not widely known outside of certain research circles, and human governments had decided to keep it quiet until they better understood what was happening and why. And Amy had been afraid that exposing Katie's abilities might result in her being taken away for study. Zara understood the mother's fear, and she assured Amy that she would not report what she had seen. And Amy looked grateful, but also troubled, and she admitted that she worried about what Katie's abilities might mean for her future. As weeks passed, Zara grew more attached to Katie, and the child's abilities continued to manifest in small ways, and she healed minor injuries on playmates and made sick plants recover, and even helped a bird that had flown into a window. But Zara also noticed something else, and each time Katie used her abilities, she seemed slightly tired afterward, and the effect was subtle but measurable, and Zara worried that the child might be using some of her own life force or energy to fuel the healing. She shared her observation with Amy, and together they began monitoring Katie's energy levels more carefully, and they discovered that the child recovered quickly after using her abilities, especially if she spent time outside in the sunlight or ate nutritious food. Zara theorized that perhaps humans could absorb and transform ambient energy in ways that other species could not, and maybe that was connected to their unusual emotional intensity and their strong connection to the planets they inhabited. One day, Katie came home from school looking troubled, and she told Zara that a boy in her class had been mean to her, and when she got upset, her desk had moved slightly without her touching it, and Zara realized Katie's abilities might be expanding beyond just healing. That evening, Zara and Amy had another serious conversation, and Amy revealed that she and other parents of gifted children had formed a secret network, and they shared information and supported each other and worried together about what would happen when the galactic community discovered the truth about human potential. Zara asked what Amy thought would happen, and the human woman's expression was grim, and she said that humanity's position in the galaxy was still precarious, and many alien species already viewed humans as dangerous because of their aggressive history and their rapid technological advancement. If other species learned that humans were developing psionic abilities or energy manipulation, or whatever these gifts actually were, it could lead to humanity being quarantined or restricted or even attacked preemptively by species that felt threatened. Zara had not considered the political implications before, but now she understood the weight of what she had witnessed, and she was caught between her duty to report unusual phenomena to galactic authorities and her growing loyalty to the family she was caring for. She decided that loyalty mattered more than rules, and she would keep Katie's secret and protect the child as she would protect any young one in her care. And Amy seemed to sense Zara's decision and thanked her with genuine emotion in her voice. The following months passed quickly, and Zara learned more about human culture and human history and the paradoxes that defined this strange species, and they could be incredibly violent, but also incredibly compassionate, and they could be selfish, but also self-sacrificing. Katie continued to develop her abilities and learned to control them better with guidance from Zara and Amy. And the child began to understand that her gifts made her different, and that different could be dangerous in a galaxy that feared change. One afternoon, Katie asked Zara if she thought humans were special, and Zara considered the question carefully before answering, and she said that every species was special in their own way, but humans had a particular intensity that made them stand out. Katie asked if that intensity was good or bad, and Zara said it was both, and that was what made humans so fascinating and so frightening to other species, and Katie seemed to understand despite her young age. Near the end of Zara's assignment, Katie healed a badly injured dog that had been hit by a vehicle, and the animal had been dying, and Katie's intervention saved its life, but the effort left the child exhausted for an entire day, and Zara held her and worried and wondered what limits these abilities might have. Amy decided that Katie needed training from someone who understood unusual abilities better than they did, and she reached out to her network and found a teacher who worked with gifted human children and helped them develop control and understanding. The teacher's name was Linda, and she was an older human woman with silver hair and calm demeanor, and she met with Katie several times and told Amy that the child had remarkable potential, but needed to learn boundaries and self-protection. Linda explained that humans with abilities often felt compelled to help everyone they encountered, but that path led to exhaustion and burnout, and Katie needed to understand that she could not save everyone, and that was acceptable. Zara appreciated Linda's wisdom, and she saw Katie gradually become more discerning about when and how to use her gifts, and the child learned to listen to her own body and recognize when she was depleting herself. As Zara's time with the family drew to a close, she felt sadness at leaving, and she had grown to love Katie and respect Amy and appreciate the complexity of human existence, and she knew she would carry this experience with her always. On her last day, Katie gave Zara a drawing she had made, and it showed a purple figure and a small human figure holding hands under a yellow. Sun and stars filled the sky above them, and Zara's eyes grew moist with tears because her species did cry, though not as readily as humans. Amy thanked Zara for her care and her discretion and her friendship, and she said that Zara had been exactly the kind of caregiver they needed, and someone who could accept Katie for who she truly was without fear or judgment. Zara returned to her ship and began the journey back to Galactic headquarters, and she filed her standard report describing a successful placement with a human family and a well-behaved creative child who showed normal development for her species. She did not mention healing abilities or energy manipulation or any of the extraordinary things she had witnessed, because she understood now that some secrets needed to be kept and some truths needed to remain hidden until the galaxy was ready to accept them. During her long journey home, Zara thought about humanity's place among the stars, and she wondered what would happen when the truth could no longer be contained because more human children were being born with abilities, and eventually the secret would emerge. She wondered if the galaxy would respond with fear and hostility, or with wonder and acceptance, and she hoped for the latter but prepared herself mentally for the former, because she had learned that change always met resistance, especially when that change challenged existing power structures. Zara also thought about Katie and hoped the child would have a chance to grow up safely and develop her gifts fully, and use them to make the world better in whatever way she chose. And she hoped that Amy and others like her would succeed in protecting their children until humanity was strong enough to defend itself. When Zara finally reached her homeworld, she was greeted by colleagues who asked about her experience with humans, and she told them that humans were indeed unusual and intense and unpredictable, but also warm and loyal and capable of great love. One colleague asked if humans posed a danger to the galactic community, and Zara thought carefully before answering, and she said that humans posed a danger only to those who would threaten the innocent or perpetuate injustice, and for everyone else humans were potential allies and friends. Her colleagues seemed satisfied with that answer, though Zara suspected some of them detected the deeper truth she was not sharing, and they did not press her because in galactic culture, privacy and discretion were valued traits. Zara requested a leave period after her assignment and spent time with her own family on her home world, and she told them stories about Earth and about a remarkable child named Katie, who loved animals and had a gift for healing, and her family listened with interest and affection. Her offspring asked if she would return to Earth someday, and Zara said she hoped so, because there was something about humans and their world that called to her and made her feel more alive than she had felt in many cycles. Months later, Zara received a message from Amy with an attached video file, and she opened it and saw Katie waving at the camera and smiling that bright human smile. And the child said she missed Zara and hoped she would visit again soon. In the video, Katie also demonstrated how she had been practicing her abilities, and she held a wilted plant and focused her attention on it, and the plant gradually revived and grew new leaves and bloomed with colorful flowers, and Katie looked proud but not boastful. Amy appeared in the video and reported that Katie was doing well and learning to balance her gifts with normal childhood activities, and the family remained grateful for Zara's care and discretion during her time with them, and they considered her part of their family. Now Zara felt warmth spread through her body as she watched the video, and she realized that this was what humans called love, and it was different from the affection she felt for her own species, and it carried a particular intensity that was distinctly human in quality. She composed a careful response and told Katie to continue practicing, but also to remember to rest and take care of herself, and she told Amy that she would indeed like to visit Earth again when circumstances permitted, and she thanked them for including her in their family. Over the following years, Zara maintained contact with the Harper family, and she watched from afar as Katie grew older and more skilled with her abilities, and she heard through Amy about other gifted human children who were developing similar talents. The secret network of parents and teachers expanded, and they developed protocols for training and protecting gifted children, and they prepared for the day when humanity would have to reveal the truth to the galactic community. That day came sooner than anyone expected, and a human colony on a frontier world was attacked by raiders from an aggressive species that did not respect galactic law, and during the attack, several human children used their abilities to defend themselves and their families. The incident was recorded, and the footage spread across the galactic network before anyone could contain it. And suddenly, every species in the galaxy knew that humans possessed abilities that had never been documented or declared. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session and demanded answers from human representatives, and there was fear and anger and accusations of deception and calls for sanctions or worse against humanity. Zara watched the proceedings with anxiety because she knew the human representatives were in an impossible position, and they had kept the secret to protect their children. But now that secret felt like a betrayal to many species. The human ambassador was a woman named Patricia, and she stood before the council with dignity and explained that humans had only recently discovered these abilities in their population, and they had been studying them carefully before making any announcements. Patricia admitted that the decision to keep the abilities secret had been controversial, even among humans, and she apologized for any deception, but emphasized that human parents had been acting out of love and protection for their children. She also made a bold statement and said that these abilities were not weapons, but gifts, and they were primarily oriented toward healing and growth rather than destruction, and humans had no intention of using them aggressively against other species. Several council members remained skeptical, and pointed out that abilities which could heal could also harm, and that humans already had a reputation for violence, and adding psionic powers to their arsenal was unacceptable. But other council members urged caution and pointed out that condemning an entire species for protecting their children would set a dangerous precedent, and besides, humans were not the only species with unusual abilities in the galaxy. Zara found herself in a unique position because she was one of the few non-humans who had direct experience with a gifted human child, and the Galactic Child Care Council asked her to provide testimony about what she had witnessed. She agreed, and appeared before the council and described her time with Katie, and she spoke honestly about the child's healing abilities and her compassion, and her careful control, even at such a young age. Zara also testified that during her entire assignment, she never felt threatened or endangered by Katie's abilities, and in fact she felt safer, because the child could respond to emergencies in ways that most beings could not. She concluded her testimony by saying that humans with abilities should be viewed as potential healers and helpers rather than threats, and the galaxy would benefit from embracing human gifts rather than fearing them. Her testimony carried weight because she came from a respected species known for careful observation and honest reporting, and several council members seemed to reconsider their positions after hearing her speak. The debate continued for days, and eventually the council reached a compromise, and humanity would be allowed to continue developing gifted individuals, but with oversight and reporting requirements, and human children with abilities would be registered and monitored. Many humans objected to the registration requirement because it reminded them of dark periods in their own history, but the Galactic Council insisted it was necessary for security and transparency, and eventually human leadership accepted the terms. Katie was among the first children registered, and Amy sent Zara a message saying the process had been frightening but ultimately less intrusive than feared, and Katie was relieved that she no longer had to hide who she was. Over time, attitudes toward gifted humans began to shift, and when colonies faced natural disasters or medical emergencies, human healers volunteered to help, and their abilities saved countless lives across multiple species. Gradually, fear transformed into appreciation, and then into request, and species that had initially demanded restrictions on humans began asking for human healers to be stationed on their worlds. Katie grew into a young woman and chose to pursue medical training, and she combined conventional medicine with her natural abilities and became known as one of the most skilled healers in her sector. She never forgot Zara, and they maintained their friendship across the years and the distance, and whenever Zara visited Earth, she stayed with Katie, and they talked about the early days when everything was secret and frightening. Zara eventually wrote a book about her experiences with gifted humans, and it became required reading for anyone working with human families, and it helped bridge understanding between species and showed that differences could be strengths rather than threats. Looking back, Zara realized that the afternoon when she watched Katie heal a wounded deer had changed not just her own life but potentially the course of galactic history, and one small act of compassion by one young human had rippled outward in ways no one could have predicted. Thought about how close the galaxy had come to rejecting humans out of fear, and how easily that fear could have led to isolation or conflict, and she felt grateful that voices of reason had prevailed. But she also knew the journey was far from over, and humans were still developing and evolving and discovering new aspects of their potential, and the galaxy would need to remain flexible and accepting as humanity continued to grow. Zara hoped that other species would learn from humanity's example and recognize that unusual abilities or differences should be celebrated rather than suppressed, and that diversity made the galactic community stronger, not weaker. In her old age, Zara returned to Earth one final time, and Katie, now a mature woman, with silver threads in her hair, welcomed her with tears and laughter, and they sat together in the same backyard where everything had begun. The fence was gone, now replaced by an open gate that led into the woods, and deer occasionally wandered into the yard without fear. And Katie still fed them and healed them when they were injured. Katie's own children played nearby, and they too carried gifts, and they used them naturally and without shame, because they had grown up in a galaxy that accepted them for who they were. Zara watched the children and felt peace because she knew that the future was in good hands, and that humanity would continue to surprise and challenge and inspire the galaxy for generations to come, as the sun set over Earth, painting the sky in colors that reminded Zara of her homeworld. She reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment, and she knew that bearing witness to Katie's gift had been the greatest privilege of her life. She had been shocked that afternoon so many years ago when a 6-year-old human child had done the impossible and healed a wounded animal with nothing but touch and intention and will. But now she understood that the truly unbelievable act had not been the healing itself, but the courage it took for humans to reveal their gifts to a galaxy that might reject them, and the faith they maintained that acceptance was possible. Zara held Katie's hand as the stars began to appear overhead, and she felt connected, not just to this one human but to all of humanity, and to the vast mysterious universe that continued to reveal new wonders. She had come to Earth as an observer and a caregiver, but she was leaving as something more, and she was an advocate and a friend and a believer in humanity's extraordinary potential. And somewhere in the galactic archives, her testimony remained on record as evidence that humans were capable of miracles and that those miracles deserved to be protected and celebrated, and shared with all species willing to accept them.